We all want it to be so obvious, or we all want that like moment where like a psychic is like, you're going to do blah, 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 blah. And then you're like, that's it. Like, and it's so I want to normalize it not having to ring like a bell, because we're figuring it out as we go along sometimes. And it's not always an obvious choice. And then you're like, and you don't even know till you look back and go, oh my God, I made a bunch of like micro choices along the way that got me to this huge thing that I've created. And that's very important to me. And I want it to do well.
Welcome to Second Act Stories, a podcast that profiles people who have made major life and career changes and are pursuing more rewarding lives in a second act. I'm your host, Scott Merritt.
And I'm Andy Levine, a co-host of Second Act Stories. Scott, you've got today's story. This one is really unique and different. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the background of it?
Sure. So Anna Vocino started her career as a comedic actress, and she's a professional voiceover artist, so you may not recognize her name, but for sure a lot of people are going to recognize her voice. She embarked on a second act that she didn't even realize that she was on her way toward until she reached the destination. So it was very nonlinear. She started in entertainment. Now she's the CEO of a food brand, a lifestyle brand. She's got a really interesting path, and she's got some cool advice for a lot of people.
I love the name of her company, too. Eat Happy. Wonderful name.
Eat Happy. And this episode should make everybody happy. So I look forward to sharing it with everybody.
Let's get happy and hear Anna's story.
I grew up outside of Washington, D.C. in Arlington, Virginia. And I grew up with a single mom. And my dad lived in Alabama since I was 8 months old. And so I went down there a lot, which was an adventure for me.
Where did you first get the acting bug?
My mom took me to see the Nutcracker at the Kennedy Center, Barishnikov's version, and he was dancing it. And I was enthralled. And I just thought to myself, that would be a cool thing to do. I bet I could dance just like Barishnikov. And so she signed me up for classes, and I went. And now she tells the story to me. I walked into the dance classroom studio, and I turned to her and I said, where are all the people? And she realized that I thought that you just showed up and you had an audience just ready to watch, and that there was zero effort or learning involved. So I think that there was a little bit of, I enjoy performing from a very young age. So getting bit by the acting bug was natural. And that coupled with my mom had a really wonderful talent. She was a single mom, and she was a United Methodist minister. And so that equaled not a lot of dollars growing up. And so she had a talent and a skill for getting me into schools that I had no business going to, like socioeconomically did not belong to these places. And I figured out that in order to navigate the land of the rich kids, if you don't have any money, but you're very humorous, if you're the funny friend, they'll always keep you around. You'll always have friends if you're the funny one.
So you realized your propensity to be funny as a result of feeling like an outsider.
Mm-hmm. It was a protective mechanism.
After finishing her secondary education at boarding school, Anna relocated to Atlanta to attend Emory University. While there, she helped to found the Whole World Improv Theater, which can still be found on Spring Street in Midtown. We discussed how she parlayed humor into a career.
I needed to figure out a way to be secure enough in my abilities to go out and try to get hired as an actor, as a comedic actor. And I started in improv when I was 18, and that helped a lot, and that helped build skills and give me my 10,000 hours. I mean, we did so many shows in Atlanta in the theater that I built. So that all helped as like my training ground, and doing plays in college and then doing plays as a young adult in the Atlanta theater scene. But I didn't come from minstrel folk. I came from people who were like, okay, well, that's cute. You do your little shows and your little dancing and you sing your little songs and then you go get a job.
There are several different ways to scratch a comedy itch, right? There's stand-up, there's improv, there's sketch comedy. So how do you land on improv as the right method for you?
For me, it was pretty simple. I went to Emory, and at our freshman orientation, there's a group called Rathskeller, which is the oldest collegiate improv troupe in the country. They performed at the orientation, and I was like, oh, I want to do that. Like, it was like bells rang. I was like, I want to do that. And they do sketch and improv. And I auditioned as a freshman, and I got in, and it was like a big coup to get in as a freshman. And I think for my training and what I do now, improv has served me really well for being able to do live cooking demos, being able to be on live television, being able, and feeling comfortable being off the cuff.
Can you talk a little bit about how improv prepares you for that? And, should people who aren't interested in being comics explore improv for any reason?
I'm always a huge fan of everybody doing that because what it does is it promotes active listening. And that's always a good thing for us to hear each other as humans, especially in this day and age.
As she was sharpening her comedic chops at college, Anna met her husband, Lauren, and upon graduating, they headed to Los Angeles. I asked her how she got her footing as an actress in an industry that's notoriously impossible to break into.
Well, all of the entertainment industry is a relationship business. So the first thing that I advise the baby actors to do, call everybody you know, ask your dad's coworkers, cousins, mailman who knows somebody to introduce you. You never know where things are going to lead. Meeting people and getting to know people is the fastest way to get a career.
What's the first official gig that you get where you think, oh, this is something that I can actually do?
I just never, I don't think I ever got to a place of, oh, I'm going to work all the time until I started doing voiceover. I was kind of dabbling in it, but then I really transitioned into only working in voiceover around 2007, 2009. So that period was so when I started doing voiceover, I was like, oh no, I'll always work at this. But I remember interviewing Tony Shalhoub for a show I did called Free Radio, where the celebs came on and played themselves, and the radio station was like a fictional radio station. He basically was like, oh, I worry I will never work again. And I was gobsmacked by that because I'm like, it's your Shalhoub, man. You're awesome. And I'm like, that is a real feeling that actors have. So to answer your question, it wasn't that I didn't think I could do it. It just terrified me that I wouldn't get hired as often as I would like to support the lifestyle that I enjoy.
Anna has enjoyed quite a successful career as a voiceover artist. She's got one of those voices you just hear all the time. In the midst of it, she kept getting acting roles, performing stand-up comedy, and at one point, with an assist from her aunt, Anna even tried her hand at political consulting, which she hated.
Then my friend Lance called me and said, I have this idea for a pilot, and can I come over to your voiceover studio and we'll record it? And that was what became Free Radio. And he went and pitched it to the network, and it got picked up. And then we wound up doing 2 seasons of that show, and then it ran on Comedy Central. And that was the last on-camera thing that I did.
Then there's a period, you have a discernible point A and a discernible point B. Because today, you have a lifestyle brand that involves cookbooks and food products. So how do you get from point A to point B? What does that journey look like? And is it deliberate?
In 2002, I was diagnosed with celiac disease, for which the only known maintenance prescription is to not eat gluten. And back then, nobody knew what the hell gluten was. But I knew what it was, and I was extremely sad that I could no longer eat it. And I decided that I was going to make all the gluten-free things that I would miss as a Southerner / Italian person and make them gluten, because the things that you could buy at the store were just horrendous tasting. And I started blogging back in 2005. And I was like, well, I'll throw up some recipes and stuff. And it got some traction, and it was like a fun thing to do. It was like my little creative outlet. And took horrible pictures, didn't know what I was doing. And a guy named Vinnie Tortorich calls me out of the blue And
Okay.
he said, I wrote this book and I want to get it out there. It's called Fitness Confidential.
Right.
And he said, I heard you produce podcasts. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that for you, but thank you. And he goes, do me a favor. I'm going to email you the book. Will you please just read it first before you decide? So I stayed up at night and read it on my little iPhone 4. And I called him. I was like, yeah, okay. And we just kind of hit it off. And his message was a message of no sugars, no grains, NSNG, that's his trademark. And a light bulb went off, a health light bulb went off in my head, which is, oh, I'm eating like all sugars, all grains, because I'm trying to make gluten-free versions of comfort food. And I had been putting on weight. And so I changed the focus of the way I ate to NSNG, no sugars, no grains, and repurposed my blog to have NSNG recipes, and that's kind of what launched it. So Vinnie and I made this podcast, which then I turned into the first cookbook, which then I turned into the second cookbook, and then I launched the food. And so that's kind of how that happened, and I didn't see that coming at all.
At what point did you decide that you were going to turn your blog into a cookbook, an actual published cookbook?
Many conversations with Vinnie. He was very instrumental in that and very helpful in that. And because I said, I don't understand why anybody would buy a cookbook these days. You can literally just Google like chicken, mushrooms, artichokes, and like 2.5 million recipes will come up. And
Right.
he pointed out to me, he was like, because people want it tied up in a bow. They want the thing, like, here's the thing. Here you go. I've created these recipes and I know they're good and I put them in a nice package. And I just kept going with it because once I said publicly, I'm going to do this cookbook, then I felt like I was on the hook.
Right. You were beholden to the people who were now expecting the cookbook.
Yeah. And luckily they nagged me about it.
So who were the people that were nagging you and looking for the cookbook?
The people were people who had been listening to the podcast. Vinnie and I had spent a lot of time building trust and rapport with our audience and interacting in our Facebook groups. And to me, it meant a lot that people were doing NSNG and getting healthy and getting off their diabetes medications and high blood pressure medications and chronic illness medications, and skin conditions were clearing up. Joint pain was going away.
Was that audience large enough to justify the publication?
I think so. I've reprinted it 6 times. And the thing that I learned from that journey, like if I hadn't have done this journey with Vinnie, first of all, on a personal level, it got me healthy. So on a personal health journey level, right there alone, it was worth it. The fact that I could turn it into a lifestyle brand, which sounds so it's a lifestyle brand. Hi, I'm Anna Vocino. I own a lifestyle brand. Hey, come with me. Let's fry up a steak on the grill and drink a vodka soda with lime. We don't have carbs in my house.
Because Anna's Eat Happy cookbooks are mission-driven, focused on gluten-free living, she also decided to establish Eat Happy Kitchen, a packaged food company that manufactures clean, gluten-free products.
I manufacture 3 flavors of marinara, a regular marinara, a puttanesca, and a pink crema, which is like a vodka sauce. And I have a pumpkin marinara that comes out seasonally. And now I think we're in like 50 retailers now, but we're making the push for grocery, which is a whole thing. And not for the faint of heart, I'm learning.
It sounds like Vinnie's expertise and knowledge mixed with your passion and your needs, frankly, for your own personal health, married with each other to create this unbelievably strong partnership of minds, this coming together of minds that enabled the launch of a brand like Eat Happy.
Yeah. And Vinnie's gone on to launch great product companies as well. So it's building the audience. And by the way, we spent what most would consider, who are in the social media space, an inordinate amount of time building trust with our audience before we started really launching and monetizing in that way. But I'm okay with that.
What about your first act, the acting slash voiceover slash waiting tables business influenced the way you're doing business today?
Well, I'm still very lucky to be working in voiceover, and voiceover is the kind of thing where you can, I mean, my booth is behind me. I can jump in the booth when I need to jump in the booth. I'm still very lucky to be the female voice of NBC. So it's a good gig. I audition for stuff. I do cartoons. I do video games. I don't think that's going anywhere anytime soon. However, my voice will age, and there will come a sweet spot that will pass, and my time will be done. So I can cook on camera as an old broad till I'm 100.
How has improv prepared you for launching a lifestyle brand like Eat Happy, especially when it comes to grocery products?
So grocery is an interesting world, and I'm not going to get too granular, but it's another relationship business, and people want to do business with people that they like. And I'm not talking about a thing to morph your personality into being somebody that somebody likes. But if you're listening to people, you would be surprised at how many people don't get listened to throughout the day. So when I go into a grocery store and I talk to a cranky manager, improv is a great skill to really listen and hear what's going on with them and their energy. And generally, I can hopefully cheer them up a little bit. But more importantly, I have a rapport now and we can talk and do business. And that's what I want. I want my interactions to be uplifting to people. And improv to me was the basis for being able to do that, for having the confidence to talking to people and listening and see what's going on about them.
What advice would you give to somebody who is trying to be an actor, but kind of sees the writing on the wall and knows that they really have to do something else to make a living?
I guarantee you have something else that you're passionate about. Early on, I read Gary Vaynerchuk's book, Crush It, like when it first came out. And I feel like he was the first one to articulate the idea that you could do multiple things. And I'm not talking about the hyphenate of writer, actor, director, or model, actress, whatever. I'm talking about, he said, you could be a dog walker and have that business, and you could have a cupcake recipe thing online, and you could do multiple things. And to me, that was very eye-opening, because you and I grew up in an era where a TV actor wasn't allowed to do film, and a film actor would never be seen doing an episode of television. That would be beneath them. So you had to pick your lane and stay in it, right? And by the way, I think the stats is still like there's 5% of food companies have female CEOs. Like, it's insane how much you don't see women in the bit, especially when I was younger. You don't see women not only in the business sphere, but being the bosses,
I want to look at that transition that you had from career one to career two. It sounds like you knew that there was a journey, but you didn't really have that clear path. At what point did you realize that, I've actually arrived at point B?
So like if somebody's like an accountant, but then they are like, screw that, I want to go fight for the rights of people and be a lawyer, you know what to do. You have to apply to law school and go to law school and get your thing and then go work for the companies that are going to go take you. Like, there's a really defined path. And both career paths that I've had have not had as defined of paths, We all want it to be so obvious, or we all want that like moment where like a psychic is like, you're going to do blah, 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 blah. And then you're like, that's it. Like, and it's so I want to normalize it not having to ring like a bell, because we're figuring it out as we go along sometimes. And it's not always an obvious choice. And then you're like, and you don't even know till you look back and go, oh my God, I made a bunch of like micro choices along the way that got me to this huge thing that I've created. And that's very important to me. And I want it to do well.
Because Anna's is such an unusual second act story, I really took some time to ponder what I wanted to share in terms of takeaways. Number one, not all second act stories are deliberate. Anna's story is different from most second act stories because it's not linear. But that's also what makes it interesting. She's had a series of jobs, acting, live performance, comedy, voiceover, that all comprised her first act. And while she's still doing some of that, it's clear that her gluten-free living brand, Eat Happy Kitchen, represents a definitive second act. Number two, not all second act stories are discernible. What's even more interesting is that Anna didn't know she was on the path to a second act until she looked back and realized it after the fact. And number three, everyone should take an improv class. At its core, improv is not about comedy. It's about active listening. Regardless of your job or your industry, whether at work or at home, active listening is a critically important skill that will help to generate success. To learn more about Anna Vocino, visit www.eathappykitchen.com and www.eathappycookbook.com. Andy and I are always on the lookout for new people to profile on second act stories. If you have a cool candidate to suggest, we'd want to hear from you. Just visit our website at secondactstories.org and click on the Nominate a Guest button at the top of the homepage. We hope you'll keep listening. There are more second act stories just around the corner.